everybody, this is Manda the Six, and welcome to another challenge build. Um, Basically, as you can probably see from this little caveman sim, we're gonna do a off-grid starter home, and I thought it would be really fun to do a cave that technically is a closed off room. So if you have seasons, for example, as you can probably tell from it's pouring rain in the game, this is a closed off room, so it will count as a shelter for the purposes of running inside or keeping your sim out of the elements. But basically, what I did was I opened up the debug cheat and looked around in there, did a lot of sizing down of the boulders and kind of miniature mountains that come in the debug menu, and basically used that as a starting point for getting this carved out, partially man made, partially natural cave going on. Um, and from there, just kind of started with a very interesting shape. I wanted it to look organic, not too many right angles, um, and have sort of an interesting shape to work with to wrap um, the boulders around. And also, what I found in the debug item was these smaller kind of planks that I sized up. So it kind of has a mix of a repurposed mine shaft or um, uh, gathering area that got repurposed into this little off the grid shelter. So I used that as a base for the shape of the house. And basically, a lot of this is just going through debug and seeing what I could find. I found some interesting uh, hanging hanging ivy, lots of sort of brush and ground cover. Uh, I did end up near the end going back through the debug and adding, I think I add one of the smaller fish ponds that you can also, I believe, find frogs in. So that will offer a activity and some utility to the area. Basically, wanted a good mix of activities that your off the grid sim would be able to do on their own. So there is a decent amount of gardening, didn't go too wild with it. There is, I believe I add a canvas for painting. I use a lot of the items that you get from wood carving, so I have a wood carving table as well, and sort of the more rustic looking sort of level one wood carving furniture gets featured, and I think that was kind of the starting point that I wanted to create this very natural, very back to the basics sort of shelter. And for the exterior and roof, I just used, I think it was gravel for the roof and one of the clean room concretes for the walls. It sort of has a rougher texture to it, uh, so it blends a little bit better with the rock. I didn't want any brickwork or anything that would be a bit too man-made or a bit too clean. So there's just enough texture that at a glance it just looks like more rock work. Um, and I tried to add a lot of little stones to bump out the silhouette and shape of the cavern, just so it's not too obvious where the repeating boulders are. And then add a lot more ground foliage, some nice big trees, and then sort of get started furnishing. I knew this one would have to be furnish and then test in live mode just because of how many items were intersecting with the furnishings. So sort of keep to the starter budget, keep to the items that are off the grid, and then go through and get the rustic wood carving items to add a little bit of visual texture and make it a little bit more rustic. And I made sure to test just about as much as I could in this build. And I believe this is technically a base game build because I had filtered the debug to be base game only. I know it gets a little weird with the debug items in particular, so sometimes you will have access to stuff that's technically in from other worlds or from other expansion packs, and it won't be flagged with the base game tag. But basically, tried to keep it very simple, very rustic. This was definitely one of those builds that you kind of ongoing test because there's so many items intersecting with the build itself. So hence why I have the little caveman sim over there. He's going to be double checking that there aren't any intersections of items in the way of each other. I believe, oddly enough, the kitchen works quite fine. It was the bathroom items that were giving me kind of a bit of trouble. But overall, just went for a nice mixture of rustic furnishings. I tried to add a pop of color where it made sense. So while a lot of the build is kind of brown, a lot of stones, a lot of wood tones, I do add a pop of color here and there, either from using plant life or candles or smaller decorations. So nothing too extravagant. Kind of wanted to still keep a very simple angle of the build. And I actually do end up planting a couple of just basic, I think it's a bunch of basic herbs and grapes and I think strawberries. So there are already plants in when you load this lot, so that sort of gives a little bit of a nice starting point, especially if for example you end up using simple living, so you're restricted to whatever you can grow. I believe that is the country living pack has that restriction for your lot, for those who want an additional challenge. So ended up adding a lot of nice little clutter items. There's some really nice hidden stuff that comes with particularly the kitchen. There's a lot of just small little elements that I think get added when a sim is cooking or baking, so I added them as just little decoration pieces. So I believe all of the furniture items that I have added have the off-the-grid tag. I did not check in particular the stuff that comes from the wood carving one. So the only ones that I'm not entirely 100% sure whether they work off the grid are the wood carving ones. The fact that I could test them and I had the off the grid lot trait on makes me think they should be fine. So I added a couple more decorative elements. I ended up using a paper towel roll to kind of act as a toilet paper little storage unit, since I didn't think having a paper towel on the wall of a cave would be entirely realistic. So that's kind of like a visual decoration element. And overall, this build's very simple in terms of decoration. I use basically a couple of carpets and mats to dress up the area, but overall it's pretty simple. Kind of leaving it open to individual sims, or whatever sim that you decide to play on this lot, to add their own style to on top of what is already here. What ended up being kind of in the way, even as I navigated this little sim around, was the changing wall separator, room separator. That ended up being in the way of the bathroom for quite a bit. So I don't know if I ended up using move objects or wiping it out entirely. I believe I wipe it out entirely. Um, so technically, your bathroom and your house lot are technically the same room. So that's a good element to keep in mind, that while Sims are in your house, so in the room, you'll kind of end up kicking out everyone when your Sim has to use the bathroom for anything. Uh, I think there's probably certain traits or lifestyle uh, rewards that make a Sim a bit more chill to the fact that, they're nude. But overall, it's just going to be one of those gameplay elements that come with the territory. An easy way of fixing that would be to close off the bathroom in a separate room. I haven't tested in any of my gameplay whether using archways on doors that has a room that's closed off technically still counts as a closed off room. So as you can see here, I snuck a smoke detector and a fire suppression system into the rock. So technically, if there's any fires on this lot, the fire department will be notified. So it is fire safe. And this is just, the little off the grid starter home. It's ready to go for a single sim. Um, there's not really a lot of room to add a double bed, to be honest, without removing some of the skill building objects. So the potential for expansion on this lot, I would say, would be to move some of those skill building objects outside. And I do add a fishing pond, so it is a pretty viable lot in terms of trying to live out in the middle of nowhere. I know there are some workaround cheats for getting a sim to live in Granite Falls, so that would probably be the ideal area to put this little lot. Um, I built it in Glimmerbrook just because it's a forested area, but even having a little a little cave off of a main road is a little odd. But Glimmerbrook is full of odd people, so that kind of works out. I think the other place that you could potentially put it would be on one of the really big 64 by 64 lots, perhaps in Brindleton Bay, or potentially in one of the less populated areas of Oasis Springs, or what's the island called? The island that comes with Get Together. I can't think of it right off the top of my head. But there's definitely some more isolated areas that putting this starter home might fit a little well. You could also just, plop it in Desal Valley and call it a movie set, and that would also work as well. So thank you all for watching this video. Please let me know if you have any ideas for another challenge build, um, or let me know what you think of this build in particular. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care now.